Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we're talking about a ban list discussion video, the way too early ban list discussion. It's actually not that early. It feels a little weird. It feels like the format just started because we just got, it feels like we just got Bursts of Destiny. We just got the Synchro Storm booster set, and that really has shaped the format with Lyricist, Tri-Brigade, and Sword Soul being the best two decks of the format. And it feels like we just started. I wouldn't be surprised. I know I have 7 cards that I want to talk about today, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got less. Right now, usually what Konami likes to do is Konami will go small ban list, big ban list, small ban list, big ban list. But even with the emergence of Sword Soul, we see that there was really... it's still not a super impressive form. Like, we still see like random tier 2 decks pop up. We still see like Altergeist and Eldritch and even like Prank Kids and Phantom Knights and Virtual World, Dragon Link, Salamangreat are all still really fine. Like, they're not horrible archetypes. I think that what we saw from Sword Soul, we thought could be crazy, ended up not being super duper crazy. But I do want to talk about a ban list. Cards I think that should be banned. Cards that I think might come back. I think the 3 cards I picked that might come back are kind of crazy, though. I'm not going to lie. Because I don't really know. I like that part, but I don't really know if there are any cards that should come back right now from the ban list. But you guys can, of course, let me know. Right? This isn't a... These are the cards that are going to get banned, and I don't want anybody else to talk. Like, this is obviously more than probably any other kind of video. This is like a discussion video. You know what I mean? Like what cards? Because there's just so many cards on the ban list, so many cards that could get banned. Like, maybe, I don't know. Maybe you think that like Salamangreat Circle needs to get banned, or maybe you think that Prank Kids Place needs to get banned still. Because I don't know. Maybe let me know what you guys think. I don't play at your locals. I don't play at your regionals. I don't play in your tournaments. But these are the cards that I think should get banned or unbanned or limited or different things like that. And the first card, as you could probably have guessed, was Sword Soul Emergence. I think that if we're going to hit Sword Soul, it's got to be Emergence, because what Emergence does is it really makes the consistency of the deck crazy. Right? Regardless if it's the 10E version, which I think is a little more consistent, or it's just the Fusion Destiny version, Sword Soul Emergence, it fixes hands. Cards like that, it just honestly fixes hands, right? And it's got level manipulation too. You always got to read those secondary effects. If a secondary effect is like actually not that bad, like I've seen secondary effects. Like, you can increase the level or decrease the level by 1 to the end of the turn. Like, I've seen that as the only effect on cards. So the fact that this is a Rhoda or a Stratos or whatever you want to call it for the entire archetype, like all monsters can be searched with Sword Soul Emergence, is actually kind of busted. It's like, early game, that's crazy because you can get to your starter cards. Mid game, that's crazy because you can get to cards to respond to your opponent. Late game, that's crazy because you can top deck this card and get your archetype going again. Like, the fact of the matter is that no, Sword Soul isn't this like tier 0 super oppressive archetype, but it is still the best deck of the format. It is still like the archetype that you need to focus on to be able to do anything. I think the reason why we don't see too many Sword Soul decks topping is because everyone that's playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively right now knows that's the deck to be. You better have your token collectors, or I got it over here, the card that this guy, Soundproof, right? You better have those cards that counter Sword Soul, or you're going to be in a bad spot. So usually we see the second or third best deck of the format is actually, or like the second or third most represented deck is actually the best deck of the format because it gets countered so much, right? We've seen that time and time again where the deck that gets countered the most doesn't actually end up being the best. Sword Soul gets countered the most, without a doubt. Like you could tell me if there's another archetype you're more afraid of going to a locals or going to any Yu-Gi-Oh event, but I genuinely think that Sword Soul is the most terrifying archetype in the game right now, and it does need to get hit, even though it's not as oppressive. Like, Sword Soul doesn't get a ribbon for not being tier 0. Like, you don't get a ribbon for being just like the best deck, but not oppressively the best deck. So that's what I think. I think if Konami's going to hit Sword Soul, though, it's got to be this. If they hit one of the monsters, it feels like that's kind of hitting it too hard. Like, it feels like losing Emergence, it doesn't kill the archetype at all. And it probably still would be the best deck of the format, but it does hurt it. You will feel it. There will be game states, situations where you're like, man, I wish I had another Emergence, right? And the next card I want to talk about is actually going to be Brigade Revolt. I'm actually going to save that card for later, if you can read that, which is like, it's possible. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. Brigade Revolt. I was taking a little bit of a hiatus from YouTube, and I didn't get the opportunity to react to the last ban list. But was it weird that like Brigade didn't get hit at all? Like, Brigade, the history of Brigade was like when it came out, it was tier 2, pretty decent. And then like after a few months, when Virtual World lost all calamities, because I think Brigade was during all calamities format. It was kind of like tier 1. And then when all of the other tier 1 decks got hurt, Brigade was just like the best deck. Brigade Zoo was the best deck. And then Konami was just like, we're going to get rid of Zoo. And now Brigade is just this amazing archetype that like you can just throw so many random archetypes in. Yes, Lyricist, Bird Up appears to be the main version. But regardless if it's like, okay, so we're going to hit Lyricist? No, you have to hit Brigade. And the best 2 cards to hit if you're going to hit Brigade is Revolt and Shurik, right? You hit, and this hitting Revolt for me is similar to hitting Emergence. Because if you hit Shurik, or if you hit Fractal, or Kit, or Nerval, and I feel like those are the only main deck monsters that you could hit, you kind of hurt the archetype a lot. And maybe that's fine. Maybe you're like, okay, well that's fine. Like, we still don't have Colossus. Like, I'm okay if Brigade doesn't have like its best cards. I get that, right? But just because Konami has banned and limited a deck so hard that it made it disappear doesn't mean that they have to do that all the time. And I think if you hit Brigade Revolt, you put it at, honestly, putting it at 1 doesn't really do a whole lot, unfortunately, because like you put it at 1, because you can put Emergence at 1, and that hurts it a lot. Like, obviously the card is searchable, but what's powerful about Emergence isn't just that you know, it's the starter card. If you open it, it's great. It's also that like mid to late game, it's amazing. Revolt's not really like that. Like, Revolt's okay mid to late game, but really you're just trying to resolve one Revolt during a duel. And so you gotta ban this card if you're going to hit this card. You can't have semi-limited, doesn't do anything, and then because it's searchable, and then limiting, it's kind of the same situation. So my biggest issue with Revolt, on top of the Shurik pop, is it resets the archetype. It puts your Fractals, it puts your Nervals, it puts your Kits, it puts your Kurazes back in the graveyard. It gives you opportunity to do all those things. Like, the fact that you can pop a card from your opponent, Foolish Burial, and add a card, all with just one trap card, is insane, right? It's insane, and it's not, Shurik is not the issue. Like, if you ban Shurik, the archetype is a lot worse, right? If you ban Revolt, the archetype is worse, but it's still playable, which is why I think Revolt needs to get hit. What I want to talk about is going to be Imperial Order. It's just like, okay, I think like what Konami needs to do with this card is put it to 3 or ban it, because right now it's super sacky. Like, I understand that like they eroded it, so it made it kind of okay, and that could be a video in and of itself. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that, like what cards could get an errata, because some cards are a decent errata away from coming back. But Imperial Order is just, okay, so when Konami hits certain cards, they say that we're hitting these cards because it, like Kaiser Coliseum or Vanity's Emptiness, like generic cards. I'm trying to think of other generic cards that have been banned more recently, that got banned because they do not encourage proper Yu-Gi-Oh! Game states, right? At the end of the day, Imperial Order wins games. And so, like regardless of what you're playing, like, you'll see, like, you'll look at deck, like literally, how's this? You could argue Imperial Order doesn't need to get banned, But you can go YouTube search deck profile. Click the last month only, right, in the filter section. Look at the first 5 deck profiles. I would not be shocked nor surprised if the only trap card in at least 3 of those deck profiles was Imperial Order. And you know that's true. Like, you know that, like, in a lot of situations, maybe they'll have torrential and mirror forces or whatever, but you like Imperial Order is almost always in there, and it's so weird because it's like it's not like Imperial Order is a card like Anti-Spell Fragrance, like isn't that great in like Sky Strikers. It's actually pretty good in Sky Strikers, but like Anti-Spell Fragrance, it hurts both players very well, right? Imperial Order almost always benefits only the person who has it flip face up. And like I said, I know it got eroded. I know it makes it a little more balanced. And there have been situations where like I've almost lost to my own Imperial Order, but I've never lost to it because you can't lose to it, right? Maybe that's what it needs. It needs an errata that says like pay 700 life points even if you don't have 700 life. Like it can literally kill you. Maybe that makes the card more balanced. But I don't know. Like I just think that Imperial, like you shouldn't. There shouldn't be, other than Exodia, there shouldn't be a card in the game that literally just says you win the duel, right? And Imperial Order says that. That's why I think the card needs to be banned. And the next card, final card I want to talk about, I don't know why the picture is so tiny. We'll see, we'll zoom in. So we'll give the illusion that it's not tiny. That's what she said. And the last card I want to talk about is Verite Anaconda. No archetype. I understand that what you can... Okay, because a good counterpoint... Because I've heard a lot of counterpoints on Verite Anaconda not getting banned. But a good counterpoint that I heard, one that I actually liked, was that... Okay, well, banning this card hurts, like, fluidity of other archetypes. It hurts player expression. Like, you don't have to just summon Dragoon and Phoenix Enforcer off of Anaconda, right? Like, you can summon a lot of fusion monsters, right? And I get that, right? But the fact of the matter is like, unless you're gonna ban like all of them, like all of the great targets for Anaconda, like that's the thing. Like, Verite Anaconda has got 2 routes that it can take, right? It's got the Crystron Halka-Fibrax route, or it's got getting banned route, that route, right? The Crystron Halka-Fibrax route is, instead of banning the card, Crystron Halka-Fibrax, we're going to ban all of the great targets for Crystron Halka-Fibrax so the card can be played, right? Maybe that's what they'll do with Verite Anaconda. I don't know. It just seems a little bit simpler and a little bit easier to just hit Verite Anaconda. Like, do you really think Mecha Phantom Beast O-Line would be banned if Halka-Fibrax was banned? No. What about Jet Synchron? No. Right? So you're either going to just get rid of Phoenix Enforcer and make Fusion Destiny not as good of a card, make Red Eyes Fusion not as good of a card because you're going to ban Dragoon, you're going to ban them both, you're going to limit them or whatever, or just get rid of the problem child, Verite Anaconda, right? But that's just not my thought on that. So let me know what you guys think. What cards really need to get banned? And I really want this to be a discussion, like I mentioned. But now we're gonna talk about cards I think would be interesting if they came off the ban list. And the first card I want to talk about is Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King. So with this, I was trying to think of what archetype I wanted to talk about. Like, obviously, I'm a Salamangreat player, so I wanted to talk about Gazelle. Right, but Salamangreat was good like 2 years ago. Right, like there's Black Dragon, Colossus, like I mentioned earlier. Like all of those cards could have been in a Masterpiece's spot. The reason why Masterpiece is here is because P2 got banned like what 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. I think it's time, right? I think it's time. I think maybe Konami's afraid of, kind of like with Dragon Rulers, the versatility of Masterpiece, right? The fact that is you could like Eldritch wants Masterpiece to come back, right? Like, oh, I get a 2950 beat stick that's unaffected by traps, rock and roll. Like I'm okay with that, right? I think like I'm trying to think, like maybe Sky Striker. I don't run too many continuous spells, but like spell books kind of do. I'm trying to think of what archetype runs continuous spells and it's kind of good. I mean, like the weather does. I don't know if you know what the weather is, but if you do, if you know the weather, I gotta see if you're at this point in the video and you know what the archetype the weather is. You know what I'm referring to when I say that. Type hashtag free masterpiece in the comment section. Let's just see if that can be a thing, but or just type hashtag the weather, because I don't know if this card should come back. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if this card should come back, but it really wasn't that bad. But the thing about cards like this, even like Dragoon or Phoenix Enforcer or Shen or whatever, Baguska, whatever, you can kaiju it. You can play Santa Claus over it. I think the Volcanic Queen has that effect as well. Like it's an issue, but like when Masterpiece was around, we didn't have Forbidden Droplets, we didn't have Lightning Storm, we didn't have Regeki at 3, we didn't have Dark Ruler no more. Masterpiece. Okay, so back Masterpiece. It does get because he's unaffected by those, but. I don't know, okay? I don't know. I made a great point just now and I countered myself. Like, that'd be crazy if Forbidden Droplets said that. Like, cards that are unaffected by spells are still affected by this card. That would be crazy. But even so, though, like, that the point does still remain. Like, okay, yes, if the Masterpiece is unaffected by spells, then it can't get hit by Forbidden Droplets. But if it's able to be affected by spells, you can play Forbidden Droplets. You can play Dark Ruler No More, and you're kosher. You're fine, right? So the fact of the matter is, like, yes, this is an insanely powerful card and probably should never come back. But at some point, it feels like it should be time. The next card I want to talk about, Heavy Metafold Electromite. This card's in a different spot because for me with this card, I don't really know why it's still banned. Like I always feel like its interaction with Astrograph Sorcerer was the biggest problem. Like I never thought that like it itself was a completely unbalanced card. And right now, the current state that Pendulums are in is like non-existent. And it's partially because it doesn't have a Great Link monster, but mostly because its Great Link monster is banned. Right? Like, so Konami either needs to print a card that is as good as Heavy Metafold's Electromite, but maybe not as good for Pendulum monsters, or just give them a card back. And I'm not saying bring them back to 3 or bring them back to 7. I'm saying put the card at 1, see what it looks like. If it's a problem and Pendulum Magicians are tier 0, which they won't be, put it back to reban it. But I think the time has come for the Electromite. And the final card I want to talk about is Maximus C. So nobody really plays Crossout Designator. And the fact of the matter is, when Max C got banned, we didn't have Ash Blossom. We didn't have Dimension Shifter, I don't think. We didn't have Crossout Designator. We didn't have Appaloosa. Appaloosa doesn't really play around Maxi. But we didn't have... There are ways, kind of, that you could get to a monster quick enough to where you can stop the Max. There are some decks that can stop Maxi, like, without using any hand traps. Right? And, like I said, no one runs Crossout Designator. Maxi returning would probably mean Crossout Designator is going to have to be at least at 1 or 2. Because if you don't negate the Maxi, you're not going to win the duel. Right? Because I think the main reason why Maxi has not come back is honestly for the reasons I just mentioned as to why it could come back. Like, yes, we have Ash Blossom now. Yes, we have, like, Nibiru, and we have, like, there's the water ghost hand trap that says, like, your opponent, if they special summon, you gain life points equal to their attack, or like 1,000 or something like that. And if they don't special summon, you take half, you lose half your life points. I don't remember the card's name, but there is a card that, like Nibiru, like Maxi, counter special summoning, right? So like the thing is like Max C could draw into those cards. And you don't want it at 1. You don't want Max C at 1. As someone who played during a format when Max C was at 1, you don't want it at 1. Because then it just becomes another Imperial Order. It's like, I drew it, I win. Right? It's like, well, if I draw my Ash, if I draw my Gamma, if I draw Crossout Designator, if I draw Call by the Grave, which are all cards that we did not have access to when Max C was at 3, then I'm okay. And it's like at 1, it's real sacky. But at 3, you run it at 2, because I don't think running Max C at 3 is appropriate. And you're in a fine spot. So I go back and forth. Like some days I wake up and I hate Max C. And some days I wake up and I want the card to be back. And just because I'm curious. So let me know what you guys think. And this goes for any card on the ban list, you know, at limited, semi-limited. What cards do you think need to come off the ban list? And what cards do you think need to go on it? Let me know in those comments down below. Click that like button to show your support for the channel. Subscribe for even more content. Most importantly of all, have a good day.